It's Detroit, it's a Wednesday, and Marcus Ericsson would like to offer you some chalky milk. Welcome back to Motorsport 101. That is the most meme-tastic intro for this podcast will ever go. But welcome to episode 309 of Motorsport 101. I'm your friendly neighbourhood host, Dre Harrison. And we have an IndyCar special edition of Motorsport 101 this time around, only because Motorsport thought it would be a great idea to put literally everything this weekend. Way to go, everybody. Thanks for making our lives a living hell for next week. But in the meantime, we have a nice, calm, quiet, delightfully smooth IndyCar doubleheader in Detroit to get through this weekend. And it was a fun time for all involved. Unless you're in a Penske. Or you're a Romain Grosjean. But we'll get to that in the next 45 minutes or so. With me, as always, RJ O'Connell. Hello, sir.
Folks, this coming weekend, I believe it's the weekend of the 19th, 20th. It's massive. I mean, keep in mind, we were supposed to have the Canadian Grand Prix this past weekend. But, they ain't running Montreal without spectators in attendance, so that ain't happening. So, what do we have? We have Formula 1, Formula 3, Formula E, Formula Regional, Super Formula Lights, IndyCar, Indy Pro 2000, Indy Lights, USF 2000, Euro Formula Open, GT World Challenge Europe. We got it all. Supercars, DTM, NASCAR.
The debut of ETCR.
Yeah. and if you want to take two wheels away, we've got MotoGP at the Saxon Ring as well, where Marquez is going for 11 consecutive wins. It's a lot.
Don't know how likely that is.
We'll see. Let's just say it's anti-clockwise. It might help the old shoulder. Point is that we got a lot going on, and God help the scriptwriter for these episodes. Oh wait, that's me. Shit.
Better add a liquid cooler to that keyboard.
I'm gonna have carpal tunnel by next Wednesday. King, how's it going, big man?
Yeah. Also, another person who had a bad weekend last weekend, Felix Rosenquist. Hope he gets better soon.
Indeed.
No kidding. You know who else had a bad week following that? Renus VK.
Nasty stuff, nasty. Oh, jeez, that was not great. But obviously, good to hear Felix is on the mend. Good to hear Felix is relatively okay. Probably be back next weekend. He hasn't been cleared. We'll get into the nitty-gritty behind that a little bit, but he's got quite an interesting replacement in that number 7 car. Let's just say, if you noticed that IMSA was rated in Detroit this past weekend, there's a bit of a crossover going on there. You'll see what I mean later. Also, outside of the world of motorsport, get well soon, Christian Erickson, as well, because that was utterly horrifying to watch in the world of football.
That was a really brutal couple of hours just watching sport in our Discord, because
yeah.
After following Erickson,
they said Erickson was gone.
He was dead for 2 minutes. Yeah, just terrified stuff. It was an awful couple of hours in sport, where especially when you get into the context of Felix's crash, that was, again, about 2 hours later in the world of sport. I was like, oh, for God's sake, please, dear God, no. Thankfully, everybody involved is okay. Somehow you don't know how sometimes, but here we are. That's sport for you. Cam, good to see you, man. How's it going?
It's going okay. I'm drinking that Manti Gatorade. Still celebrating. You know, it just blows me away how everyone said at the start of this basketball season, hey, maybe that's too many games in too short a time period, and now everyone's knees are made of toothpicks and chewing gum. Good job, guys.
Everyone has no hammies.
Money from games.
Why did the Players Association sign off on this? Oh, I said at the start of the year 58 games would probably have been ideal, and no, we had 72, and that everybody's hurt. Everybody's hurt or caught COVID or something. It is brutal. Like Wodge has been tweeting with fire entrails coming off his fingers today because we found out Kawhi might have done his ACL in. Chris Paul entered COVID protocol, and Mike Conley's out as well. I'm just sitting here going, what the hell is going on in basketball? It's been a wild week of sports, to say the least. But
thankfully, we're not a basketball podcast, so we don't have to worry about this.
Yeah, we don't have to talk about Kevin Durant getting a 49-point triple.
No, thank God.
King, try and say that without crying.
I can't.
And oh God. Let's just say if we did have a sports car segment this week, I would have some very strong thoughts.
Oh, Jim.
No, not even. Jim is a footnote at this point. The reason why I didn't write an IMSA section for this week's podcast, because I would have done if there was something to talk about. However, we have been reduced to the late 2000s GT1 era of just having a class with the 2 Corvettes. It's not good. It is.
Thank goodness DPI came in to steal the show.
DPI was pretty fun. Congratulations.
DPI was pretty fun, and we had a victory overturned by way of technical disqualification. I'm just shocked that we're not talking about the newest hotness in motorsport, that is Superstar Racing Experience King.
We have IROC.
I never actually watched. It was actually too late for me at night to watch it, but as a real quick intro, because this is a short set list. How was it, King? I've got pure curiosity.
Alio Castronev is murdered.
That's what I needed to know. Perfect.
I won 4 Indy 500s, and you're all dead to me.
Marco Andretti made moves if Marco Andretti made moves in IndyCar the way he was making an SRS, he'd probably be a 3-time series champion by now.
Might still be in the series.
Damn.
It's audacious, really.
I might have to dig that up somewhere. I'll have to dig that out somewhere. That alone is that's all the appeal I needed. Helio Castroneves beats down the field. I'm okay with that.
No. He actually committed
track
murders.
Oh, that kind of murdering.
like iRacing week 13 murder. Not.
Oh,
we have ARCA breaks in real life.
Okay, now I even more want to see this now.
ARCA breaks in real life.
I gotta. Right, I'm going on Racing For Me later, the totally legal sourced website. In the meantime, we're going to talk about IndyCar's duel in Detroit on this episode. 2 very different winners over the course of the races. Yes, the 4th new winner in IndyCar this season, and up until halfway through the weekend, we'd had 7 different race winners in the first 7 rounds of the IndyCar season, as yes, Marcus Ericsson won an IndyCar race.
Lord,
I'm as shocked as you are. Chocolate chip for everybody. Marcus Ericsson gets a W. We'll talk about how he got to that point and how unbelievable that was. And then in race 2, Pato O'Ward becomes the first repeat winner of the season, which again is really weird to say. Well, not only he won the race, he climbed through the field and took the championship lead, all in the space of one weekend. We'll be talking all about that, a bit about Jimmy Johnson, and some of the quite famous replacements we'll be talking about as well for this weekend at Road America. All of that in the next 45 minutes or so. But places you can find us in the meantime. We're on YouTube at youtube.com/motorsport101 if you're watching us on there right now. Hi! Subscribe, hit the like button, hit the bell for notifications, all that good stuff. There was also a fun little live stream I did where I just talked to everybody for 2.5 hours. That was fun. Check that out as well. We're on Facebook.com/Motorsport101. We're on Twitter at Motorsport_101. And if you'd like to follow our personal handles, they're on the screen right now. They're in the description down below on YouTube as well. But if not, they're at Harrison101HD, at RJ O'Connell, at Ryan Eric King, and at CBuckley917. You can follow us on Instagram as well if you like Motorsport101 Pod. for bonus content on there, and also notifications when new episodes go up, as well as our Patreon. If you really, really want to back us on there, you can back us at patreon.com/motorsport101. $5 gets you early access to all of the audio versions of these shows before the general release. $10 gets you the video versions, as well as access to the supporters club of our Discord server, where you can listen to these episodes live as they're being recorded. Go check that out if you haven't already. So, without further ado, let's get into the IndyCar duel in Detroit.
Oh, another duel in Detroit. And in race one Marcus Ericsson joined Rinus VeeKay, Pato O'Ward, and Alex Palou as the fourth new winner in the 2021 season. He did it with a very fast Ganassi and a lot of luck, as race one kind of went down to a sprint to the finish. I'm not mistaking this for any other race. I'm not mistaking this for the Azerbaijan Grand Prix.
Oh no, definitely not.
We had another late race, another late race stoppage because one Romain Grosjean went into the wall, and the race was red flag, so we'd definitely have a finish under green. And when the line rolled off behind the safety car, someone did not roll off along with them.
No one could roll because of that car being at the front of the line.
Yes. I mean, they just drove around him. And when they realized, yes, the leader, Will Power, couldn't get his engine fired.
Would you say that his car won't power?
Release the hounds!
Will Power int.
Will Power ints, and Penske didn't have to retire Will Power from the race, so were eventually able to get his car refired, but he had to go to the back of the line, so he could not possibly win the race. And when the race went green, Marcus Ericsson pulled away from the field and won the race. Yes, and fun fact for you people keeping watch out there, this is Marcus Ericsson's first win since the Nürburgring feature race in the 2013 GP2 season.
It's been 8 years since Marcus Ericsson won a race in a race he's taken part in a series.
Yeah, so, did any of you guys think that Ganassi would have all three cars winning a race this year?
All three?
Oh God, I did it again.
Well, we'll get to that.
There's a fourth car there, King. How dare you forget our Lord and Saviour, Jimmy Johnson? How dare you?
We're jumping the queue in the set list.
Release the Tigers!
I'm never going to financially
We got Tigers. Do I get the Kraken later? Is that what's going to happen?
Yes.
No,
there's a
they're not
Kraken
going-
pit below you.
They're not running the newest NHL expansion franchise in Seattle.
No. Oh, jeez. I mean, again, you would never have guessed this at the top. Look, honestly, I thought Dixon will definitely win a race. I thought if the chips fall this way, Palou might win a race. He did on the first round of the year in convincing fashion, so that was easily proven wrong at King's expense. Marcus Ericsson, no! Come on! like, no disrespect to Marcus, he's been fine in IndyCar in his career today, but never did you think, like, even unless you had one of these crazy races like this one, that you'd think Marcus Ericsson would win an IndyCar race. And Ericsson made a valid point after the race where he said, look, this is my best track. And he's probably right. It is his best track. He's had some good results here in the past. Wasn't his second place in Detroit as well? I'm pretty sure
that
it
was.
was.
His only podium going into this weekend.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
he's always done well here.
Yeah, other than that stint of leading the 2017 500, this has been the place where he shined the most in his IndyCar career, and fair play to him. He put himself in position. The strategies played out where he ended up in second place, and then released an EMP on Will Power's car while they were parked in the pits.
Was that like the 15 laps chased kill streak? Was it? Yeah, like we're playing Modern Warfare 2 again. Oh dear. But yeah, we'll get to Willpower's struggles in a minute. But I mean, I'll give Marcus this. I know it's easy to go, oh look, fluke win. We all love one of those, like a Pierre Gasly from last year. His pace was very good in the second half of that race.
Marcus Ericsson could actually live with Willpower's speed. He was stuck to within like a second of him.
Yeah, there was some great team radio that was on IndyCar's YouTube and social media as well during the race, where Erickson was genuinely like adamant that he had the pace to beat Power. He thought he was fast. He was just looking for a way around him. And hey, we'll never know for sure if that what would have happened, because we were robbed of a sprint finish, I guess you could say, because well, Erickson just broke off at the end, which almost took some of the wind out of its sails in the end, which is kind of weird. Normally, you take this competitive red to, get a guaranteed exciting finish, and it actually kind of wasn't. Erickson just kind of pulled away due to the Powell's car not restarting. So, yeah, oh boy.
Yeah, and I get wanting to have a finish on the green, and I get not wanting to do overtime, because that's dumb. Don't do it. Yeah. Don't be NASCAR.
Don't be NASCAR.
Don't be NASCAR.
But it was egregiously manufactured, because
of course
there's no way you could defend saying, oh, there's no way the field could have circulated behind the safety car around Grosjean's wreck. There was space there.
They could. No, it was trying to force a green flag finish, which again we get, and you want to see a race finish under green, but when you have to go that far to manufacture such a finish, it's a little far.
Yeah,
takes a little wind out of the sails on that one. I mean, yeah.
I get wanting to do that, because there was that massive red flag during the race.
Yeah, that's
it was not the only red flag.
Felix Rosenqvist had a jam throttle and slammed into the turn 6 tire barriers, coming on a strand drive at 164 clicks. Now, I thought it was actually cool that NBC cut to the camera and Felix is moving around the car, and while he is in distress, he is clearly alert.
Yeah, he
was conscious.
He was alert
after the whole experience, because that's a terrifying wreck. He stacked in the tire barriers at almost full speed with a stuck throttle. He knocked over an entire ass concrete barrier.
Yeah, when his car went in, it submarined underneath the tires, hit concrete first. As RJ said, shoved the concrete barrier out and toppled it over.
It knocked it down, toppled it over, just from the force of one car.
Yeah. And destroyed the tire barrier, destroyed the catch fencing, and thankfully, it was a crash that looked worse than it was. Felix is okay.
Yeah.
There was initially a lot of worries about his lower extremities. Thankfully, nothing severe.
Understandable.
And obviously had the wind knocked out of him. We hope he recovers as quickly as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Because it had been a tough season for him up to that point. Now it's just gotten worse.
Yeah.
I want to talk about Marcus Ericsson for a bit, because I think it's cool that he got this win. He said something after the race that he had forgotten what it felt like to win. And I get it. Because what was the lasting memory of Marcus Ericsson in Formula One?
Not doing a whole lot at the back of the grid.
His lasting memory was Haas engineer Gary Gannon blaming him for Romain Grosjean wrecking under the safety car in Baku. That's the most remarkable moment of Marcus Ericsson's career. What did he do before that? 4 years of underperforming in GP2, coming off the back of winning a Formula BMW title in Europe and an All-Japan F3 title overseas in Asia. And then all of the wind just completely flew out of his tails. This dude was testing for brawn as a teenager. And then he ends up, when he finally breaks into F1, it's with a dead-on-its-legs Caterham team. His financial considerations are the only reason he sticks around for Sauber. Until Alfa Romeo comes in and they're just like, yeah, we're going with Charles and Kimi and Antonio. Sorry, Marcus, you can be our brand ambassador.
Yeah, unfortunately, the lasting memory is more or less being Charles Leclerc's punching bag for his last year in Formula One.
Pretty much everybody's punching bag. Kamui, Andre, Nasser.
Andre first day out qualifies him by a second, but fair enough to Marcus.
It was brutal.
He's been solid enough in IndyCar and puts together a few good results per year. He found himself in position to win a race and brought it home.
Remarkably consistent last year. Even if he didn't finish on the podium last year, he was still regularly finishing inside the top 10. Of course, you could say, oh, that's just because he's driving for Ganassi, but he definitely showed improvement this second year. He showed improvement again this third season.
Look, not everyone can be Scott Dixon.
Sucks for Will. Yeah. That sucks for Willpower that he lost the lead the way that he did. But Marcus Ericsson, I feel, had something for him. It wasn't like, it wasn't completely out of the realm of possibility that Erickson could have caught and passed him. It would have been a lot tougher. But I'm not going to say this is like a total fluke. This isn't like Carlos Huertas winning in Houston with a fuel tank that's too large or some weird shit like that. It's not Mario Dominguez winning Surfer's Paradise in torrential downpour when they don't know when to call the race off.
Yeah, as a counterpoint.
And you know what's...
Go ahead, Dre.
Go on, Cam. No, I was going to say, the terrifying fact of this now is that with the Detroit weekend in the books, Marcus Ericsson is now 7th in the championship. 7th. Chip Ganassi is 2, 3, and 7 right now. And Dixon is not the lead car.
No, Dixon...
What's happening? This team is insane!
Yeah, Dixon was kind of all over the place this weekend, which is not what you think of when you think of Scott Dixon. You usually think of relentless... But, no. And on the other side... God damn it. On the other side of the equation... Willpower's had a really bad, few weeks.
Oh.
This, you think, okay, maybe he's on the other side of it, had an okay Indy 500 once qualifying shit show ended, and he's in position to win this race. I think he had it under control, albeit not dominating.
Right.
And an ECU issue where the ECU got confused during shutdown of the car for that final red flag. It was not actually overheating, as was initially theorized.
And said by Willpower, who, can I just say, and I know some people will disagree, but that showed an incredible amount of restraint. Willpower showed immense restraint, not to just drop 50 F-bombs on that interview we had with Kevin Lee after the race.
He was pissed. He was incensed.
I worked my ass off for this.
Look, we know Willpower can be quite blunt with race control when he feels like they have wronged him, as we're coming up on the 10th anniversary of that particular meme. I'm still kind of mad I didn't go to that race, but I also didn't want to be soggy.
True.
Will showed a lot of restraint in the face of what has probably been the most trying first half of an IndyCar season of his career. Despite re-signing for Penske for the future, this has not been very good. Sometimes it's been on him. Other times he has been driving the nuts off of a car that didn't deserve to be piloted by him.
When he turned it around and when he went from the back of the grid to finishing 6th in the second race, that was his first top 10 since St. Pete. His other results been 14th, 13th, 11th, 30th, 20th.
Yeah.
Brutal. It's not what you expect for a driver of his caliber, and again, as Cam said, some of it's on him. You got to look at it through a fine-tooth comb to pick apart how much of it is on him and how much of it is just sheer rotten luck. And if anything, I love the poetic scene of as Will is completely venting his spleen about race control and driver influence. Alex Rossi walks past, and he's like, he's had awful luck too! And I'm just like, he's not wrong. It's just Rossi and Power arm in arm with the enemy. I think that was actually quite charming. But it has been brutal for Will, and that was a race he deserved to win in race 1, and that he just had it ripped out from underneath him with 5 to go. I wouldn't even be talking to the media after that, let alone going on 15 F-bombs.
No, you'd see the door close behind you, and then the windows explode from a scream. I mean, in that second race, he had fire coming out of his ears.
Oh yeah, it showed. And again, he did really, really well to finish that race in 6th, quite frankly. Hopefully, a turnaround soon for Will Power. A bit more on Penske in a little bit. But we'll talk a little bit about race 2 here as well. Again, like, we had 2 late race restarts. Not red flag restarts, but still had 2 late cautions at the end. Including Romain Grosjean catching fire again, and everyone taking a great deep breath. Like, whoa, wait a minute, no. He was fine.
Thankfully,
he leapt out of the car.
Small
fire.
Fire.
He decided he was going to put out that fire himself.
It's like, fuck it.
I got this myself. He's just shaking off the AMR safety team like, yo, I got this. I want to prove to them that I'm not no bitch.
It had been a pretty miserable weekend for Grosjean. He had the puncher, and then he had a drive-through for some sloppy driving, and then spins, and then his brakes are all just white hot, and brutal weekend for Grosjean.
Top 5 both races and has nothing to show for it.
Yeah,
what's the real story of race 2?
The real story of race 2 was Pato O'Ward making a late surge. There were 7 laps to go after that final caution, and he went from 5th to the win, including 2 passes in 2 corners on that restart. He drove like a man possessed. He passed Josef Newgarden with 4 to go and would take the win and the championship lead for McLaren Arrow SP ahead of Josef Newgarden, who had been running at the front pretty much the entire race. I think he'd led 67 laps out of the 70.
67 laps, but he didn't lead the 3 that counted.
Yep, with Alex Palou finishing 3rd to only put him a point off the top of the championship standings. I mean, RJ, you put out a great piece on Race Fans talking about Pato O'Ward and how his career's pretty much been on the brink of collapse 2 or 3 times over
4 or
already.
5 times.
Yeah, God, you lose count sometimes given the hurdles he's had to jump through. And we talked a lot about how great Pato was after his first win earlier this season, but what does this mean for McLaren? How close are they to really hitting the strike? Because I can't remember a time, if ever, that Schmidt-Peterson, as we know them, has led the championship. This is huge.
They haven't had someone like this. There were flashes with James Hinchcliffe. I'd argue there were flashes with Simon Pagenaud, because let's not forget, Simon was doing amazing things with Schmidt-Peterson before, but this is the first time that you could say that McLaren SP, the great McLaren, looks like they're a legitimate top-tier team. It's because of the talent of somebody like Patricio O'Ward. I'll tell you, on those 2 late restarts, he was just cutting up dudes left and right. He looked like young Juan Pablo Montoya out there. And, again, this is a guy who you can write you can fill like a 3-hour documentary on all the bullshit that he went through in 2019 alone, where he has a drive at Harding Racing until he doesn't. He has 13 races at Carlin until Red Bull signed him, and then he only does 8 because he's off doing Formula 2 and Super Formula because Red Bull think he has super license points to get him in F1. Only he doesn't, and it's not his fault. And now he's getting an F1 test that Red Bull wouldn't give him. And then you just kind of forget, like, wow, in 2016 in Indy Pro 2000, this dude only had 2 race weekends guaranteed. He sweeps the month of May at Indianapolis, has a brutal collapse to end that season, and loses out on a 6-figure scholarship that would have drastically altered the trajectory of his career. So you kind of think, like, man, how many times could we have gone without ever seeing Patricio O'Ward ever reach this step? And I know, like, okay, he's leading by a point in the middle of the season. He's closer to the summit than any other Schmidt-Peterson driver, any other driver outside the big three of Penske, Ganassi, or Andretti have been in quite some time. Like, good health and opportunity willing, this kid is going to win multiple championships. This is not going to be his last win of the season, I feel. And we're coming back to a place in Road America where he almost took his first win to start last season.
Yeah,
good.
That colossal dogfight with future teammate Felix Rosenquist last year, where he lost by essentially a nose, as we call it in horse racing circles. I mean, championship leader is unbelievable given the talent that's in IndyCar. It's not a total surprise to me because again he was up in this range last year. It's like when we look back on 2020, you look back and you realise, wait, Pato O'Ward was third and Colton Herta was fourth after all of this, and the way it all shook out, it was like
O'Ward was fourth, but it wasn't by much, and O'Ward was finishing ahead of dudes like Will Power, Simon Pagenaud in the point standings. Like, damn, and this is just his first full season, and he's not driving for one of the big three.
Yeah, and look, you're talking to who was the saltiest James Hinchcliffe fan when he lost that job. And in the back of my head, I knew there was a valid argument you could make for putting Pato O'Ward in the 5 car, and I never wanted to admit it because I was a biased fanboy, and I will hold my hands up to that. Like I wrote about it and everything. I was like, how the hell do you get rid of James Hinchcliffe? And a lot of people at IndyCar were mad about that. And, you know, we saw glimpses of what the team could do. Because I don't want to forget Robert Wickens and his contribution either, because Wickens did a sensational job in his brief time in the 6 car. And I do sincerely hope he does find the way back. Because he was so good in his short time at SPM to even get the team into this point. But this kid is special. Like, RJ alluded to everything he talked about. He's still only 22 years old. Like, 22! He's got 15 more years of this if he wants it. At least, he is terrifyingly good. Like,
do not bet the house on F1 again. We saw that one last time. If they throw you a top-tier drive, that's fine. Whatever. But just, you do you, and you start thinking about being Mexico's first IndyCar Series champion and Indianapolis 500 winner, because that's coming down the road sooner than y'all think. This dude, as Stephen A. Smith would say, this dude is box office. This dude is a Skywalker.
Get out of my head. That's what I was going to say. Patricio O'Ward is the definition of box office. He's fun to watch. He's fun to watch cut through the field. He is fast as hell. And to win that race, now, disclaimer, Josef Newgarden was on like 47-year-old tires by that point. But he had to put a forceful move on Newgarden, who held on as well as he could to finish second.
Yeah, Newgarden, I could tell that the grip was coming off, but I did not expect him to go full-on initial D, going on a strand drive where you need all the momentum. And I know they touched the middle of it, but once I saw Newgarden slide and Pato get out run, I was just like, yeah, this is over. It's just a matter of when, and please don't stack it in the tires.
Yeah. Pato, wheel to wheel, he's a fantastic judge of making a move that's right on the limit, but still clean.
This
and
is
decisive and getting past someone. Those restarts were just
sensational.
This man had a Rolex watch before he turned 18.
Yeah, terrifying stuff. And look, I want to move in alongside this to talking about Josef Newgarden a little bit, and I'll be the first person to say as well, Josef Newgarden was sensational in that race. Very, very nearly won that race with every, it's not like a big, moment happened in that race that ultimately cost Newgarden the win. It was like lots of little ones. It was probably Dalton Kellett's car in pit lane.
It was those last cautions, because even if Newgarden is out there and his tires fall off, he was beating the field so bad that he could have been out there on dead tires. He could have been out there on dead tires and won comfortably. Just another chapter in the continuing saga of Penske being in position to win and then not winning hard.
They had
losing in increasingly spectacular ways.
Yeah, Josef explained after race, like, they had to pit to cover off the possibility of, if Dalton Kellett stopped the pit exit, they're going to throw a caution, and that caution ultimately never came. So that led him to do, I think, about 10 more tires on a scuffed set of alternate tires than he wanted to do. And if the disparity looked bad on television this week, Josef actually said that the alternate tires were actually way better than they were in 2019, the last time we raced in Detroit.
Yeah.
If that tells you anything.
Yeah, the red tires were not the tire to be on here. They were good over one lap, and that was it. They were 2013 Pirelli-esque.
Oh, I remember those days. The days of India where guys were coming in after 2 laps on the softs. I remember those days.
That
I remember
happened
that.
In race 1. We had people getting off the red tires within 2-3 laps.
2 laps. Yeah, they had a
2-3
lap
laps.
minimum. That's all they wanted to do on them.
Hunter Ray came in on the minimum. He came in on the start lap 3. Like, that's how bad the alternate was.
Amazingly,
How on earth? Sorry, how on earth has Penske not won a race this season? Chevrolet is leading the engine manufacturers championship. Ed Carpenter has won a race this season, and Penske are winless.
Like, Chevrolet has performed well solely on the backs of McLaren.
McLaren and Ed Carpenter.
That sentence.
Like, it's another problem where Penske seems to have too much of a good thing where it's a different Penske performing the best in every race. I'm here to tell you right now, Santino Ferrucci and I have a damn problem with him hitting Pagenaud in both races. Pagenaud was on for a top 5 in race 1. I'm still mad.
I don't know how he keeps cranking out these top 10s in a backup car that's configured for speedways and not street course. It's fine.
Why couldn't he just
He's
be
annoyingly good at he is annoyingly good at IndyCar activities, Ferrucci.
Yeah.
There's no getting around it. He's just good at this.
But even without a win, Josef Newgarden has been all over the place this year. He has been inconsistent as hell. He's still hanging on to the title fight despite not having a win.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
He's one more win, and he's right back in the thick of this fight. He's only 51 points out of first place in 4th.
But it feels like it's taking spectacular performances just to get Penske's cars in position to maybe win, maybe get a top 5. Remember, Simon Pagenaud saved Roger from a pretty horrific month of embarrassment at Indianapolis, along with Newgarden, who also had a much better race than qualifying. But even before then, Josef crashing in the first race when he looked like he was going to have a decent race, at least by practice times. They're just really up and down. All 4 of their drivers, and to say nothing of Scotty McLaughlin, he's a rookie, he's still learning this, but he's equally up and down with the rest of Penske.
Yeah, it's not the year where you want a rookie to learn because you expect everybody else to be better, and they just kind of haven't really been the usual Penske we associated them with. I'll tell you something for free as well. After that race, I've never seen Josef Newgarden so dejected not to have won a race. He looked
miserable. 67 out of 70 laps. And you lose with the eventual winner just driving the fuck away from you, and you have to hold on to the skin of your teeth just to hold on to a podium?
Yeah, Josef
He
Newgarden
looked like someone had beaten him up.
He drove the race of his life to hold on to second. He did everything right, and sometimes in racing that's not enough. But Penske needs to, if they want to win these titles, and if they want to be competitive going forward, because this is kind of the second year of this, after a pretty crushing 2019 between the Indy 500 and then the overall championship, last year they were all over the place until Newgarden made a late rally. This year is more of the same. We got
8 races left. We're at halfway now.
Yep.
They've got to recapture some of that consistency that has been their staple for the last ever.
Yeah.
With Team Penske.
Yeah.
1995 aside.
They're running out of time. Newgarden probably needs at least a couple of wins to really start taking chunks out of this lap, because Palou is not going away. O'Ward is now officially a threat, and there's still a lot of hoops to jump through with a lot of guys who can still win. Dixon didn't gain any ground on the title fight this weekend, but he didn't lose any either. He's still exactly the same 36 points back he was at the start of Detroit, somehow.
Every Ganassi performed pretty poorly except for the one that isn't in the title fight that won race 1. Palou blew his entire points lead after the Indy 500 in one race.
Yeah, he started from the back foot, having to start from the back due to a grid penalty. It was actually a pretty good result that he salvaged 15th out of the first race, let alone a podium in race 2.
Indeed. Should we go from one end of the grid to the other here for a minute? Because
same team though.
Same team, Chip Ganassi, but as King alluded to earlier, there is a fourth way. There is the fourth car at the back of the field. It contains one Jimmy Johnson. And let's just say Twitter has had enough of Jimmy Johnson learning this car. It was quite a prominent tweeter in the motorsport landscape. It was virtual statman Sean Kelly, who put out this interesting tweet after the Detroit weekend, where, quote, "The weird defending of Jimmy Johnson's IndyCar performances are getting tiresome. No other driver gets a grace period to not be last every week racing for Chip Ganassi, while the other 3 drivers have all won this year. If he was Jimmy No Name, he'd be getting crucified." End quote. And the replies were spicy. IndyCar drivers themselves picked up on this tweet, with Alex Rossi saying, quote, "This is a really dumb statement." And I love Cam's man, Simon Pagano, going, "Totally agree with Alex." End quote. So the question I pose to you fellas is, did Sean have a point? Is Jimmy getting hard to defend? And is his presence more about extracurricular means than the racing itself?
I'm just wondering what everybody expected when Jimmy Johnson jumped over to IndyCar in the first place. Like, were y'all expecting national championship number 8 from a guy who turns 46 this year, hadn't won a cup race since 2017, hadn't really been a factor for a title since then, hadn't ever driven a single-seater competitively, because before
RJ,
stock car racing, his entire background was stadium super trucks.
I'd say that, like, no one expected Jimmy Johnson to win. 0 people. But when most of the NBC broadcast, anytime there's a lull period, they go to focus on Jimmy Johnson. Jimmy Johnson, by all imperative measures, he's the most well-known driver in the entire field.
Yeah.
By a mile.
When NBC focuses most of their broadcasts on Jimmy Johnson, a lot of people who probably don't know that much about racing are questioning, why is most of the broadcast focused on the guy running in last place?
RJ, to counter what you said, Jimmy Johnson's reputation is above reproach. He is a 7-time NASCAR champion, one of the greatest drivers that the United States has ever seen. However, I didn't expect him to come in and start beating fools, because he's in the twilight of his overall career. He has, as you said, he hasn't run a race since 2017. I didn't expect us to be halfway through the season and he is still cleanly the worst driver in the series. And that's because I've seen what Jimmy Johnson is capable of doing from my childhood until a couple of years ago in NASCAR, where until pretty late on and potentially after a really nasty crash, Jimmy Johnson was a walking W.
There's one line. I was rewatching Race 2's highlights on IndyCar's YouTube channel. Just to remind myself of anything I might have missed in the lead up to recording this show. And there was one line of commentary that really got me during Race 2, and it was, and I'm paraphrasing Townsend Bell here, so forgive me, but I believe it was along the lines of, "Oh, look at the back there, that's Jimmy Johnson there, tangling with Dalton Kellett, look at him go," and I'm just like, oh, it's just like,
If anything, Dalton Kellett should be smoking this dude because he's been driving single-seaters now for the past decade.
Yeah, but
this man was in like
RJ,
Indy Lights for 7 years.
On the other hand, one's in a Foyt and one's in a Ganassi, and Ganassi currently have, I mentioned earlier in the episode, 2, 3, and 7 in the championship, and then Johnson, and to that effect, Tony Kanaan, also another really damn good driver, put that same car in the Fast 9.
Yeah,
it's less wanting to be critical of Jimmy to dunk on him, and more because I expected more from a driver of this caliber who we know is really fucking good in a racing car.
Yeah, I going into the season, I just assumed Jimmy Johnson was going to be somewhere 14th through 16th. It would have been fine, but it's been worse than that.
If it was just fringe of the top 10, I would take that to the bank. But it's not.
Yeah. Look, if there's one thing it proves is that this series is very, very hard to compete in. Some of the finest racing drivers in the world race in IndyCar. I'm not one of these F1 nut huggers that will say that the F1 seat is the pinnacle of motorsport. It's not.
It's
the motorsport world is expansive,
discipline.
way beyond that.
And there's a dozen different motorsport disciplines.
Yeah, right. We could have these circular arguments the whole way, like Dario Franchitti, IndyCar legend, terrible in NASCAR. Jacques Villeneuve, Formula One world champion, terrible in NASCAR.
But the thing is, no one was out here saying, no one was out here on the broadcast saying that, Dario is, doing well for what he's doing right now. No one was out here actively saying, this is great. The broadcast and what's happening on the track is
completely different.
Seems like two completely different worlds. And that's where I really can't back what the drivers are saying, because they're not watching the broadcast. They see the data. They see, they know how hard it is. They know Jimmy is trying, but they're not making any circumstances that, Jimmy's doing great out there today.
Yeah, it's a lot of it's the perception of the broadcast and what that is doing.
All I will say is, when Cody Ware steps into a car at Road America, this will put the whole thing into perspective.
No, because we already saw that perspective when he was terrible, no good, and very bad at this year's 24 Hours of Daytona.
Yeah.
Look, I was going to say, are these guys being protective of Jimmy because they know what a massive pull he is for this series?
I don't think it's
that. Is that an element of this?
Just that, because you have to remember IndyCar is kind of it's a melting pot of drivers from different series. A lot of these drivers have taken part in other disciplines. A lot of them were brought up in sports cars and still compete in sports cars. They know how hard it can be, and it's bad enough when you're learning a new discipline and you are, late teens, early 20s at the start of your career. It's got to be hard when you're in the twilight of your career and you've never touched one of these things or even anything equivalent to it.
Exactly. His entire racing background is nothing to do with any of this shit, and he's learning it at age 46.
Yeah.
It's
just it goes back to, I think King hit it on the head with the broadcast.
Doesn't help.
Wouldn't look as bad if NBC wasn't bigging him up all the time.
Yeah, and constantly
he's
putting him on camera. And yeah, it's he's a huge pull for the series just on the basis if you just look at social media, Jimmy Johnson has 2.5 million followers on Twitter. He's
a household name.
Scott Dixon, I think, as just a comparison, Scott Dixon has, I think, maybe 150,000 followers.
Josef Newgarden, 2-time series champion, has 81,000 Twitter followers.
Jimmy Johnson is a household name, and he earned that by beating everyone black and blue for about the better part of 20 years in NASCAR.
I honestly get we need to give Jimmy time. We need to understand what his limits are, but again, we can't be out here saying that fighting for 18th is just like fighting for 4th. It's just not the same.
It bugs me because I don't want to see... We saw enough issues in the last couple of years. It's a shame he got out of NASCAR when he did, because Hendrick is beating everyone into the ground in Cup right now. Why does it have to be Hendrick driver number 5? However,
to follow on from your point, Cal, I was going to say, like, it's the broadcast doesn't help. The broadcast is going all in on Johnson, and it's hard for us as a viewer to take it seriously when you're going all in on a guy that's a back marker. Yeah. Everybody looks stupid. Like, anyone that knows IndyCar, the line of Jimmy Johnson beefs with Dalton Kellett is a horrible line to have to utter and listen and take in.
And Jimmy doesn't have to hear that.
No.
He's not plugged into Townsend Bell gushing about how awesome he is.
But the thing is that all of us at home do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a perspective. And when we get it, the people in the sport get it. The people who know watching understand, but in the take racing fandom out of it. Say you're watching IndyCar for the first time. Why is the broadcast focusing on the guy who's 19th? And then it kind of makes sense of why are we doing this? And it hurts because we're watching Johnson in the twilight of his career kind of do the Kimmy thing of former world champion who's now kind of running around nowhere. And I don't like seeing it because I'm used to Jimmy Johnson winning by half a lap in a Cup Series car.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to tank his legacy. It's not going to tank his legacy.
Oh, of course.
By the time this arrangement is over, whether that's at the end of next season or this season or it's at the end of this week, it's not going to damage his legacy. This is for him to do something for funsies.
Yeah.
I think the broadcast needs to acknowledge that. That's just all I'm saying.
Yeah, that's 100% fair. It's not the first time we've been critical of NBC's broadcast. We saw it on the other end of Ferrucci last year. We talked profusely about that on the show last year, about how that was the other end of the scale in the sense of,
like, honestly, if they played this as a way that this is something that Jimmy's always wanted to do, that he's admired the IndyCar series, that would be something good for the championship. Jimmy does not have to be competitive.
No. No, like, his presence is great for IndyCar as a whole. You could see the drivers, they adore and they respect the crap out of this man. We saw him swap helmets with Will Power. He called him an icon of motorsport. They know it's a big deal, so of course the drivers are going to get defensive about it. But I don't think what Sean had to say was an invalid point either. I mean, at face value, it's not ideal, but unfortunately, I think the coverage of the way he's been covered since going into this series, he's been compared to Romain Grosjean in this rookie class, who was, again, racing an F1 car as recently as last year, and Scott McLaughlin, who is a superb talent, and has proven that he's been justified all the hype that he's been getting in IndyCar this year as well. It's not a fair fight. It is not a fair fight. It was never going to win that fight, and NBC pretending to do so over the coming weeks and months since the season has started isn't helping anybody.
They're trying to push a narrative that isn't there, and the same thing occurred with when he was taking part in IMSA with the 48 Action Express car alongside Pagenaud and Kobayashi, where NBC did the same thing with Chase Elliott. Because NASCAR is infinitely more known in the public eye, thanks Tony George, NASCAR
popularity
drivers
is here. Everything else here.
Everything else in the United States, that doesn't speak to the quality of the racing product. That's just the way things played out over the last 25 years. But NBC tends to latch onto that and latch onto it way too hard, while international broadcasts, especially for IMSA, kind of just, as you said, King, kind of just roll with it like, hey, these drivers have had an interest in this for a while. This is their first crack at it. And they're in the field doing their thing. NBC needs to back off the throttle a little bit with this.
I'm not disagreeing with that at all. I guess I'm just more like, I don't know if I'm just making up a guy in my head that somehow thought that Jimmy Johnson was going to start competing for wins and championships when he's breaking into the same point that John Alesi did in that no good, terrible, awful Lotus in 2012.
Why? We do not speak of it. We speak of its livery and nothing else.
Agreed.
We speak of the Top Gear appearance.
It doesn't help. It doesn't help. Before we get out of here, we had a couple of backups announced as well. We've had a slab of unfortunate news. On one sense, Rinus VeeKay had a cycling accident a couple of days ago. He's since had surgery on it.
Yeah, broke his clavicle.
He will not be cleared in. Yeah, broke his clavicle. Thankfully, relatively okay, but he will not race this weekend at Road America. He will be replaced in the number 21 car for Red Carpenter Racing by Oliver Askew, who filled in at race 2 at McLaren after Felix's awful accident. So Askew is our new driver for hire for the week. Welcome aboard, Oliver.
But not the only one.
Taking the other one in the number 7 car, replacing Felix Rosenquist, who's not been cleared by IndyCar's team to race this weekend, will be, checks notes, Kevin Magnussen will be making his IndyCar Series debut this weekend at Road America in the number 7 Arrow car. Gentlemen, hype check. This feels like it's a little bit overdue with Kevin Magnussen, but
it does.
Cool, I guess.
It does, but it's a little strange because of all the teams that I figured he would have been back together with, the one that fired him on his birthday is not the one I'm thinking of.
No,
if Juan Pablo Montoya could come home after 15 years, the way he exited Formula One while he was still McLaren, there is always a way home at McLaren. Somehow.
Zach Brown is really out here just mending all of the family ties with all the people that McLaren...
Rebuilding all them bridges.
Rebuilding all the bridges with all of the people that McLaren's previous regime burned to the ground and salted the earth.
Yeah, I mean, King, what do you make of it all, man? K-Mag and a McLaren.
I mean,
again,
generally, it makes sense, because the way Magnussen left Formula One, he was always on the fence, because he kind of hinted that he might take a sabbatical, ended up in IMSA, and now it seems like he's kind of reignited his interest in racing again.
Well, not to forget as well, he's also signed to the Peugeot Hypercar program for 2022 onwards. So that's 2 sports car programs. We'll see if that continues with GM's impending announcement of whatever they're going to do for their sports cars. But also new IMSA winner, because we didn't talk about it. Yeah, he won that second day at Detroit and was just in the area.
We got
him and Grosjean coming together again.
That second race in Detroit, I should say.
Yeah,
Team Fireballs.
See,
so I take full
credit for
Go
that.
ahead.
I take full credit for Team Fireballs. I'm very proud of that one, and I'm sticking to it.
So how are we feeling about the Haas road to Indy?
I like it. You got Grosjean, you got Fittipaldi, you now got Magnussen. Never forget that Esteban Gutierrez is also a product of that academy, although it's easy to forget Esteban Gutierrez once drove an IndyCar. I know, surprising. No, Magnussen's a great fit. I am curious, though, that Pato O'Ward said that, their setups are going to be hard to drive, and there is a possibility that this could, really flatter Kevin Magnussen. But all he's just got to do is drive like he did in F1 at times, a.k.a. like a pissed-off teenager, and you may at least run up in the top 6 for most of the day.
If he drives the way he did in that Chip Ganassi Cadillac, I think he'll do just fine.
He'll do just fine.
Look, don't wreck the car. That's the most important part.
I'm also curious to see how Oliver Askew does now that he has more than 10 minutes of qualifying as practice before he hops in a new car.
Oof.
Oliver's a really, really fantastic talent who just things never fell the right way with McLaren SP. I know there were some shitty circumstances. He has the concussion. Did he or did he not have a beef with the team over racing with that concussion that led to his exit? It's great that he came back to fill in for Felix. That's really cool. And I'm curious to see what he does now with a full week under his belt, filling in a car that is pretty quick in the hands of Rinus VeeKay. And remember, they were title rivals in Indy Lights.
They were. Very, very spicy indeed. Like I said, that was one of the genuine shocks of IndyCar in 2020 was when Askew lost his seat and the drama that surrounded it. No one was out here saying Askew wasn't good enough to be there. We all thought, this kid can drive, most definitely. It was just one of those political shenanigans that caused his downfall.
Well, I think
from
the
series.
problem going forward for anyone in that second McLaren seat is the guy in that first McLaren seat, because Pato is making them all look like scrubs.
And we'll see if that continues this weekend at Road America alongside the literal 15 other series that are taking part with motorsport this weekend.
So much racing.
We're not doing a 24-hour charity stream.
No, thank God.
No, that would have happened during the Nürburgring, and then, no. The 24
Fox said
hours of
otherwise.
fog.
No, but we will probably pick out the best from Formula 1, MotoGP, IndyCar, and maybe a bit of Formula E at the Roval as well, depending on what goes down. I will do my best to cram as much as I can into an hour. No promises. We'll have to wait and see how we go. There's a lot to get through there. The big ones, Formula 1 at Paul Ricard this weekend, as King declared on Twitter his new favourite Grand Prix circuit in the world. He stands the Grand Prix.
No.
I don't... Those words. Is it possible to use them in a sentence like that?
It burns. It burns my soul.
Paul Ricard isn't as bad as people make it out to be.
Debatable.
I can endorse this.
You're very alone on this.
So yeah, absolutely heaped weekend of motorsport. You guys will figure it out. Look on autosport.com for a calendar or something. It's all there. In the meantime, let's get out of here. Places you can find us one more time. We're on youtube.com/motorsport101. We're on facebook.com/motorsport101. We're on Twitter at motorsport_101. Our personal handles at Harrison101HD, at CBuckley917, at Ryan Eric King, at RJ O'Connell. We're on Instagram at Motorsport101pod, and we're on Patreon.com if you want to back us financially on there. Patreon.com/Motorsport101. Next week, everything. We'll try and figure it out from there, but hopefully it will be a fun old set list. Until then, I've been Dre Harrison. They've been Cam Buckley, Ryan Eric King, and RJ O'Connell. No chocolate milk was harmed in the making of this recording, and we'll see you guys next week. Sayonara.
Later, y'all.
Bye.
The gang will return next Wednesday.
Batman don't. But I do.